Hey everybody, Ryan here from Music City, Canada. We're here for Music City Live, episode 1. Thank you so much for joining us. And why not start off episode 1 of this amazing video podcast with a longtime friend of mine, Nick Fiorucci, 40 years in DJ culture in Canada and around the world. And we're going to get started, Nick. Thank you so much for coming down from the big TO.
It's a big pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Absolutely, man. So everybody, Nick's got lots of accomplishments, but we'll get into all of that during the show here. Dance music DJ, songwriter, remixer, producer, record label founder, and owner of Zip DJ Music Record Pool. 40 years, as I mentioned, in the business. He's currently owns and manages High Bias Records here in Canada, the premier dance music label in Canada. Been going a long time. How many years now?
High Bias is in its 33rd year. Started in 1990. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've been producing probably about close to 40 years now. Music. Yeah, had a label before that called Big Shot Records.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. Which started around mid 80s.
Big Shot. See, I'm
too old. I don't feel old. Dance music keeps me young.
That's
man.
what I was gonna say, man. Dance music does keep you young. You gotta stay on. For those of us, like I started dancing, right? Before I was a DJ, I was a dancer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I miss it all the time now. I told my wife I'm going to get back into dancing again or something, to get back into it.
It's a lost art. It really is.
Yeah, totally.
It is.
And then Zip DJ. How long has Zip DJ been going?
So Zip DJ is going in its 16th year this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
These are commitments, man.
They are a big deal. Yeah, for sure, man. We're, Zip DJ was kind of a something that came out of a necessity for High Bias. Okay. That's kind of like what the whole concept was born. In a nutshell, record pools were what DJs would join in a physical community. Like, if you're based in Toronto, you would join Toronto record pools. You're in London record pool, and exactly. And so doesn't matter what city, New York City, they had different directors running these record pools, and record labels would manufacture promotional copies to give to record pools, and the record pools would be a group of DJs that are part of this pool that would get their vinyl at the time, and then it became CDs, and now it's gone digital, and that hence Zip DJ is born from the digital era and the digital evolution of record pools. But essentially it was a body of DJs that are part of this DJ community that get music usually up front from the prior to release, commercial release. Okay. And for the purpose of promoting the music that they're given from the labels. And so we work with now over 4,000 record labels. It's a digital platform. Wow. Yeah, and so we provide DJs to all over the world, so it's gone global at this point. Yeah,
4,000 record labels.
Yeah,
I bet you there's DJs out there that don't even realize there's because so there's majors involved in that, obviously, but that's predominantly dance music labels.
It is.
That's insane.
We do carry other genres. I mean, we're full open format, but our special is definitely electronic side, house music and all the encompassing electronic genres for sure. Dance is definitely our biggest.
I was on there. You got hip hop, and you got all the genres are there. Yeah, it's all there and well represented for sure.
So the goal is that the labels, we connect the labels with the DJs, and so the fact, DJs can obviously go into any record, a digital record shop and buy what they want, and nowadays DJs are actually, some are getting into the streaming realm, but it's very early days in streaming because you don't want to show up to a gig and not have Wi-Fi connection and not be able to play your sets because you're relying on streaming. So we provide digital downloads so that DJs and the labels provide us this music so that we can they could reach DJs. And if DJs play their music and play their releases, they're actually getting hopefully promotion. If a DJ plays a record at a nightclub or in a bar, then chances are, the public who are sitting there, they're going to Shazam the record. They're going to ask the DJ what the song is and hopefully add it to their Spotify playlist you know, and they'll follow the artist. And so it's essentially building consumption to the public. That's what our goal is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. So building consumption, but also, you know, curating in a way too, right? Because 4,000 labels, I mean, I can't even imagine.
So we only scratch the surface. I mean, to be honest with you, we curate a lot, right? So we get, you know, thousands more labels sending us product, but we're curating music for DJs to give them, you know, because, you know, like nowadays, unless you're willing to spend hours and hours weekly to, you know, it's almost impossible. Doesn't matter what style of DJ you are, and even if you're open format playing everything, to know everything that's coming out is virtually impossible these days. There's tens of thousands of releases weekly, let alone.
Totally.
Yeah. So what we do is we curate a lot of that music and, you know, kind of serve it up for them in a way that they can discover music in a new direction, a new era. We have trending charts. We have curated playlists. We have other DJs curating playlists and packs, as we call them. We have proprietary other charts that are gathering information of what's happening in different regions around the world, serving it up so that DJs, we're doing a lot of the homework for them.
Amazing.
And then of course they're picking and choosing from that pile, but we're doing a lot of the curating for sure.
Yeah, like I was on there, you know, I was a DJ many years ago, as you know, and so I haven't played in a long time, but you know, I remember I messaged you and I'm like, hey man, you know, I'll check out some tracks and maybe put some sets together.
Yeah.
Just for even just doing a recording, even throw it up on YouTube or whatever. But it's for me going on the you know the site for the first time, it was amazing. Like all those things you're talking about, all the charts and all that stuff, the curation was incredible. Like I'd click on Jack and House and I could have a set done in no time.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like,
that's the whole idea, right? I mean, that's the idea of is serving up the best of the best. I mean, and why is it the best? Well, it's, you know, listen, music is subjective, right? You might, for what is someone might not like a record and someone else might love a record, other DJs, and have different, but we have such a big community of DJs that together we form a big body that's helping labels promote their content ultimately to the public.
Totally. And that reminds me of, you know, earlier, you know, we were talking about the record pool days, right? And that's what that reminds me of, because like, you know, I was part of Cheer Record Pool back in the day. I used to have to drive. I drove to the meetings in Toronto.
Exactly.
I got to meet Red Alert.
Right.
At the one club. They were in town playing probably at a club in Toronto. And, or not Red Alert. What was their name? Red Alert was the track. Basement Jacks. Yeah. Basement Jacks was the guys. Yeah. So I met Basement Jacks at one of those meetings. It was great. And I felt, you know, even going to those meetings, I felt a sense of community. And you know what? Even in the mobile DJ circuit, I mean, I've been supporting those guys for a long time too, and they have their own associations. And all those types of things where those communities of DJs would come together, the amount of camaraderie and just the sharing of stories and connection, human connection and all that. I mean, I'm big on that, as you know, human connection and positive energy and all that. It's kind of gone.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like technology and the internet and social media has shifted that for DJs. Yeah,
we try to use our platform as a social hub, really. I mean, you know, in some aspects as well for the music discovery aspect. But we are also doing, you know, venturing into the bringing back the physical meetings and the virtual. And now you could, you know, if you can't make it in your specific city, then you can tune in virtually. And virtually on Zoom or Facebook or Instagram Live, whatever we're doing. I mean, so that DJs could, you know, learn about, hey, you know, they could meet the promo reps from the labels. They could shake the hands of other DJs. They could see, hey, what's going on. It's camaraderie, right? It's like these are your fellow, it's all the same in the art, you know, of DJing and music business, for sure.
It's passion, man. I mean, the reason why, you know, I was originally going to go to school to be a lawyer, and I found, you know, music through some really weird ways, but, you know, I found music because it was a sense of belonging for me, you know, and it was something that I got extremely passionate about. I also got into doing lighting too with my dad's, you know, Music City Canada is part of the PA Shop group, and my dad's company, we do a lot of live shows. We've been doing that a lot of years. So even from the lighting perspective, you know, when I was doing lights for all these shows, you know, it was everybody's, oh, you met all these bands, all this stuff. This must be so cool. And I'm like, yeah, it's cool, but they're just normal people.
Of course.
But it was the connection, it was the camaraderie, and it all stemmed from all of us being just passionate about putting on a good show.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, when I sat, we did a CDJ show together, and I remember, I'll never forget, me and you had taken Stonebridge out to dinner at the Keg in Mississauga, and me and Stone were sitting at the table, and you and Eddie were having your own chat, and I was just, you know, vibing with Stone, and I said to him, I said, you know, there's nothing like, and I missed it at that time. This is part of why I created the show.
Yeah.
I missed the connection with the crowd. You know, I hadn't been performed as a DJ for, you know, almost a decade at that point, and maybe a little less.
Yeah.
And I missed it. And I said to him, and he's been doing it a long time.
Yeah.
And he right away, he looked at me, because the way I said it, no one had ever, you know, had said it probably to him in a while. But I said, yeah, there's nothing like that energy and that connection with your crowd when you're up there. There's nothing like it. And I'm serious. There's no food I've eaten. There's nothing.
Yeah.
And that connection is what we all long for like the last 3 years, right? Every DJ out there, you know, thankfully for technology, was able to continue to stream and do all that. And like you said, it's not going away, whether it's DJ meetings or it's live performance or whatever. You're seeing a merging of technologies now, and you're seeing everyone doing both in person and live streaming. But I think that it's important for us to also recognize that, you know, coming together in a community like Zip DJ, right, among other communities out there, is important. It's important to not just, you know, go and find your music in a random place and hope it works. There's a community like Zip DJ out there that is not only curating music but bringing people together.
Yeah, I mean, promotion is my, you know, is the passion of why we built. As I said at the beginning, why I built Zip DJ was for a need of High Bias Records, which was my label, and the demise of physical goods, and now going digital. And I'm like, how am I going to get my promos into the hands of DJs? And that's kind of where it was born. It was like, let me build a platform and have a delivery mechanism. And then we opened it up to major labels and labels throughout the world, and the rest is history. But you know, you mentioned about the personal touch. That's why I'm DJing still after 40 years. You know, several times a week, I'm still doing residencies, and I love that connection with people and playing music and seeing reactions in the crowd. You know.
And you're still putting out releases too, right? Like
I am.
You're on your own name, and I saw some like Block and Crown.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do. I try to do. You know. I'd love to do more. I'd love to be in the studio more, but I try to get in there as much as I can. And, you know, production is my passion, and that's kind of what got me into the business. And DJing is my passion as well. So I try to keep both things going, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've been out of music now for, you know, 3 or 4 years. I did some music stuff with my cousin, and we were doing some stuff together, and I miss it all the time. I mean, it's that connection, right? It's
it's in your blood, man.
It just is.
But you've built something incredible here. You know, Music City is quite the animal. I finally got the full tour today. The touring division, the instrument division, the DJ side, the production side. It's incredible.
Well, it's not just me. I mean, it's the whole team. I mean, it's all these guys. You know? One of the things that people ask me all the time. It's like, how do you find good people? People are so hard to find. And I try to, I work really hard to try to find people that are as passionate as I do. Yeah. And then I just empower them. I give them the tools and the resources they need.
Absolutely.
Like we were talking about earlier, I listen to their ideas and I find a way to make it all happen. Yeah. And it's
important. Yeah.
It's totally important. And I think I think that's part of the secret sauce. And my dad really, Ron, who started PA Shop, who started the whole thing in motion, he was always about that. I mean, there was some real fundamental things that, as me and my brother Kyle were brought up in the business of PA Shop and doing concerts, there was some fundamental stuff that he taught us that, still we are all about to this day. Never hold someone back. If there's an opportunity that person has to move on to something else, embrace that, and because you never know when that's going to come back around. I mean, this business, as you know, is pretty much 2 degrees of separation.
Yeah, for sure.
So you really have to, take care of people, whether they're with you or they move on or they come back or whatever. So we've had some great people that's helped build the brand.
Yeah.
But I mean, you've had some great people along the way too. And I mean that that's what I think, a lot of why the show, I'm doing this show is to bring us all back together, bring
Amazing.
everybody together, bring the whole community, globally, Canadian, whatever, all of us back together as a music community again, because I think that there's, similar to how things have gone with nightclubs, where, there's this like lack of connection on dance floors now with cell phones out all the time, It's the same in the music community. I mean, even as artists, I see artists, not really supporting each other, not really sharing ideas, not really, I see
technology has there's good and bad of technology, how it's changed the landscape, and how the world has changed in a sense. It's true. I've seen it firsthand, and how the nightclubs and bars and restaurants and from raves and warehouse parties now to big festivals. It seems like there's this fragment between the nightclubs where people back in the 90s, for example, would line up to go dance, and now it's more like a festival. You're staring, looking at the DJ, he's the performer. But the nightclub scene has definitely taken a turn, and it's become more intimate, with bars and restaurants playing background, having DJs play background music. But music is I could turn on my phone now and access millions of records. Before that wasn't the case. You'd have to go to the CD, buy a CD or buy a record. And now everything is available. So in a sense, it's become disposable. At the same time, you could move on to the next, right?
Totally.
And so that, and that's kind of why, a platform like Zip DJ and what we're doing in general from a community standpoint is important, because we're trying to bring the community together to make these records rise to the top, because you are, one in a million. So it's hard to stand out.
Yeah. Like if we go back, touching on the club thing, I mean, for those of you that, like are maybe a little younger and didn't, like, I got a taste of it, but even where I came in was towards the tail end of what I'm going to touch on, which is, if you look back to the, Larry Levan, and, you go way back, right, to Brooklyn, New York, and how they broke records and like created entire genres and movements of people, like that would come, like, we talked last night about this, about the lighting and the sound and everything, and it was an experience, right?
I was in my early 20s, and I went to New York for the first time, and I went to hear Tony Humphries and Frankie Knuckles and David Morales, and I literally went to the nightclubs. And Tony Humphries, I'll never forget this, would play at Zanzibar in Newark, New Jersey, in the middle of nowhere.
Of all places, yeah.
And he would play a record, I'm not even joking, he'd play a record for 15 minutes over and over and over, and then he'd play that same record for another 15 minutes 2 hours later. Wow. So by the time you left the nightclub, you were singing the lyrics, you were humming the song, you knew the record. It was, and nowadays the attention span has become so short that they don't want to hear more than a minute and a half of a record. Hence mashup DJs that are going from record to record. So there has been a shift, of course, with social media, and everything is at your fingertips, and everything is quick and seconds and swipe and so forth, right? So definitely it's changed the landscape.
So coming out of the 70s, going into the 80s and even into the 90s, like, what was the club scene like? Like, from your perspective, what was the club scene like back then?
Well, I was fortunate to get at a young age. I actually lied about my age. You had to be 19 to be in clubs because of liquor license, right? And so I lied and said I was 19. I got my first club gig at 18, and by fluke it ended up being, and it was a brand new place, and really it was a fluke that it ended up being an amazing club. Like, it was incredible. Good sound system, good location. It was in the west end of Toronto at the time, near the airport, and that was a happening district. And it went, the club ended up building to the point where I was DJing there a couple nights a week. There was actually my late partner in High Bias that we started together was DJing a couple other nights of the week. And to that point, I was there, like I'd show up at 8 o'clock in the evening. Nowadays DJs, like, clubs don't even open the doors till 10 p.m. But anyway, I'd show up at 8 o'clock. Yeah. And I'm not joking that there'd be a lineup of maybe 50, 70 people already at 8 o'clock. It was light outside and they were lined up to get there, to get in.
You just blew half the people's minds watching this
I'm
show.
not joking. I'm not
Half
joking.
the DJs
all the
watching
girls
this.
all dolled up and all the guys waiting to get in. And you know, by 9:30, 10 o'clock, it was full on. And we were like, you know, the peak, it was like midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, you know, and then it would wind down. Nowadays, like, people don't go out till midnight. Totally. But, you know, it was incredible. I'd pull up with, you know, and I'd have my vinyl crates and I'd be walking in and there's like 50 people in line and I'd wave, hey guys, I'll see you inside and whatever. And it was on the go. I was on, you know, and it become that club kind of is what got me into the business, to be honest with you, because we, you know, I had a passion for music. I started as a, you know, taking lessons. My parents had put me into music lessons, guitar lessons. I played accordion. I played a bit of piano, and I loved music. But getting into the DJ aspect, I realized that, oh, you know, here's this Janet Jackson record, or here's this, you know, Jermaine Stewart or something, you know, from that era, and we wanted to extend the version, or we wanted to do something different. So my partner and I, at the time, we were like, he became my partner later on in High Bias Records. We became production partners. Okay. But he was playing, and we would actually stay. After the club would close, we had a reel-to-reel. We would do editing of these mixes, and we'd have exclusive edits that no one had. And so I would play it the next week, and people would come up and go, "Where do you got that version?" and this and that. And we were like, you know, at the time, and I hate to say that because I run a label, but we were making, you know, mixtapes, and people, we had lineups of people waiting for mixtapes on reel tape. Exactly. It was cassette at the time, live in the club. And the club became so famous. The club was called Affairs in the Skyline Hotel in the Airport Strip. And it became, and then Misty's was another one. It became so big that we started publishing charts. Weekly charts printed that were at the door so people would see what we were playing. And that's how we were breaking music at the time. Yeah.
Even then. And when was that?
That was, it opened in, it was late 80s, 80, 89 or something. And then it went I was at that particular venue pretty much from the day it opened to the day it closed for about 6 years. And then it shut down. Okay. And then I moved, and I had my crowd follow me, and I went to another venue, and and the rest is history. I've been DJing a lot of residencies over the years. I've traveled around as well, but it's fun, like having a home, you know, place to call home. You go and you build a night, and you build a set, and you take them through a journey.
Yeah. Well, that was all part of that conversation I had with Stonebridge, and you know, is the whole journey thing. And I learned that when I was attending parties back in the 90s, in the early 90s. Like I said, I was dancing and stuff, and I attended a bunch of raves, you know, and learned what it was like to take people on a journey. Yeah. Right. And so, you know, because I never did drugs or anything like that. I had some health things that stopped me from being able to do all that. But I always used to tell people were like, you know, when I was performing years later, like, how come you get so into it, man? Because people that knew me knew that I wasn't on anything. Yeah. And I'm like, man, I'm getting high on the music.
The music, yeah.
On the energy of the people, right? You know, and that was, you know, whether I was in the crowd as an attendee dancing or whether I was up there performing as a DJ, it was the same for me. Yeah. That was the obsession, was that whole connection and energy. And so, yeah, I totally see it. Yeah. So speaking of, you know, traveling and like, so what would you say, you know, what were some of your bigger gigs? Like where did you go? Wow. What did you do?
I have a lot of memories. I mean, I used to visit, you know, the UK a lot. I used to DJ in the UK a lot. This is from, you know, I think the first time I went there was like 89. And then I kept going back and I never stopped till like, throughout the 90s. But some of the highlights, I would say, we had our 10th anniversary. We actually had a couple anniversary parties, our 5th and our 10th at Ministry of Sound.
Wow.
And I was like headlining Ministry of Sound. We've taken over the club. And that was like incredible. Amazing. Yeah, I did. I actually was at Hacienda. I've done, some of the early raves where the word rave was new, and now they're called festivals, where you have 5,000 people, and it was insane to see, and this is something I'm coming from Canada going to the UK, and I was young, and it was like, it blew my mind. It was like, it was incredible. Yeah.
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
So when would that have been? Like the 5th anniversary, the first time you played there? When would
it was in the early 90s. Yeah.
Early 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I haven't had the chance to go to the Ministry of Sound yet. I know when
it's still going. I
know
believe it's still open.
The last time I talked to Stuart from Tool Room, he said they had taken over a night there.
Yeah.
And I had every intention to go and visit, but then the last 2.5 years of chaos hit, and I didn't get the chance yet. But gonna definitely go make a trip and check it out. And that's a long time running, man. That club.
Absolutely, yeah. It's an institution for sure, and they've taken the brand pretty much internationally. But that was. I mean, there's so many memories. I've had some amazing, even this going back to some of the early clubs that I played at. Even up to recent days that. They have different emotions that things have, like I could play a bar and have a wicked night where there's only 150 people, but the place is vibing and the groove is there and everybody's bopping and they're feeling the music and they're giving your thumbs up and they're bopping and dancing and whatever. So it's an awesome feeling. Yeah, that's what keeps me going. I love the passion of making people happy and you could basically control the crowd with the music.
So we talked about this earlier, me and you, before the show, is, so we've talked here on the show about the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and now coming into the 2000s, like I stopped DJing in around 2001, 2002, 2003. So I was, in my opinion, towards what I feel is the tail end of what you're talking about, where we're talking about these crowds coming out early, lining up. Like I remember some of the lineups were insane.
Yeah.
And the only place I've seen that, even in the last decade, was in Miami on New Year's Eve, which makes sense.
Yeah.
And but lately, like even in the town where we are now in London, I generally will drive up and down the strip, even on Saturday night, even though I'm not going out. I still have that curiosity, like who's got
what's happening?
What's happening? Who's got the crowd, right?
Yeah.
And to my dismay, every time I drive up and down the strip, even clubs here that and bars, student bars that typically would be packed at midnight, let alone like you were saying 8, 9, 10 o'clock, okay, they're half empty.
Yeah.
On a Saturday night.
Yeah.
And one of the local DJs from here in town, we were chatting yesterday. He was in the store. And he said, this club used to be busy on a Wednesday. Now it's half dead.
Yeah.
This club used to be busy on a Saturday. Now it's half dead.
Yeah.
So the club thing is changing. And you've been playing in Toronto in a lot of like restaurant type clubs.
I play everything. I mean, from clubs to bars to restaurants. But yes, I think it's,
is it shifting?
The shift of the world that we all know of, and economics. I mean, people can't afford to go out every night, right? And it's like the, cost of meals and drinks and so forth and going out. So they pick and choose, and it's not, but they're still busy venues.
Sure.
But a lot of the younger crowds now tend to save up and go and spend, and splurge on going to a festival, right? And then they have their 3-day thing. And, but yeah, the days of nightclubs and that era has certainly changed for sure.
And what are you seeing? Like, so in like when you're playing on a typical Friday, Saturday night, are people dancing?
It all depends the venue. I mean, I usually get people dancing, but nowadays, you could be playing a bar gig or a restaurant gig, and it's just about creating the vibe, the atmosphere in the background. They're socializing, drinking, picking up, doing whatever. I mean, meeting, greeting, and so forth. And so it's not the same as when I remember from, the 90s where, people would line up and girls would be like excited to go and they just hit the dance floor at 9:30 p.m. and dance
all night
for hours. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it was a different. I haven't, that's changed. So it's kind of shifted now to these festivals and other things. Now there are nightclubs that still have that dance crowd.
Yeah.
There's underground places. There's there's parties and so forth. But for the mainstream, it's changed, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And you touched on technology earlier. Like I've seen a few people talk about, how people are more interested in being on their cell phones and, showing off the bottle service in the booth to where they are instead of showing them, instead of being in the moment on the dance floor.
My favorite quote, right? You don't know that.
What is it?
It's bottle service killed the dance floor. it literally, in my opinion, that's my saying, and that and it's true.
That's a good one.
It's true. As bottle service was introduced, nightclubs and venues were trying to, they have to try to sell as much alcohol and gain as much income as they can through a very short window of time. Because if people are showing up at 11 o'clock and the bar closes at 2, it's a very short window to sell booze. So now they're trying to sell a full bottle. It makes sense instead of buying individual stuff. So, but since that point, it's become more like, with the advent of social media and showing all your friends. And so people are not exactly present. They're all trying to show where they are online, to their friends and
Sure.
in your Instagram stories and your TikToks and your, and your Snapchats and so forth of where you are at that time. And so, but that's just, it's human nature and what we are in technology and the evolution of
it's changed
of today.
But I think it's important for us to address that here, right? Like I think
Absolutely.
it's important to make the DJs out there who are listening, and even there's a lot of different types of people listening to this show.
I would love nothing more than for people to put their cell phones and
away
leave it at the door.
I went to a couple of shows, comedy shows.
Yes.
A lot of them, they make you lock your phones up.
That's for a little different because they don't want you recording their sets and leaking that stuff.
But it's a different experience.
Absolutely, because you're
is.
not distracted.
No.
You're focused. Absolutely, I agree with that. I mean, there's a concept there.
There's a concept,
and it's being done. There's parties. There's headphone parties where you're in your own space, where you're
the silent disco.
Silent disco, exactly. I mean, virtual raves, all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've been present for a few of those different things, right? And I think that from my standpoint, like I stopped DJing when we had, we had cell phones and we had cameras on them, but like not like now, like not like it is now. And you're right, they're not present in that moment. So as a DJ, and as someone who's trying to curate a journey, it's impossible.
Yeah.
People don't even, they miss, like, by the time they're done pouring a bottle down their throat and taking their Instagram story and posting it, you've gone through three or four songs.
You're missing the experience. Yeah. I and that's where the art of DJing is trying to get them to listen, to hear the music, and to focus and to go, oh, wow, cool. And start bopping. It's like, oh, and notice, and then,
I think that should be a challenge. Like, I think, if there's people listening to the show that are club owners or people that want to be bar owners or promoters, more likely promoters, DJs. I think that's a challenge. That's the challenge that I'd put out there to everybody. Try to, take what you're hearing on the show and pivot and be different, get people off those devices and get them enjoying the experience of the club, the experience of the night, the experience of the journey.
That's bold, It's like
it is, but
lock your cell phone at
well,
the
not
door.
lock your cell phone. I mean, I'm not, you're not going to, like you said, you're not going to change the current human nature.
Yeah.
But I think it's important, so some of the best club nights I ever had was going to clubs that took their club policies really seriously, right? Like they had, you couldn't go in wearing jeans, just those kind of things.
Oh, no. Yeah, for sure. Dress code. Yeah. Absolutely.
Dress code and all these kind of things. And even just how the staff would be, told to treat the patrons, the bartenders were smiling.
Yep.
Everybody was having a good time because it was all part of it. Right.
Yeah.
We were a family back then. Like the people in the club, and the people attending could feel it. but it was this unsaid thing where like the DJ and the bar backs and we were a family. Like we got together for like Christmas dinner at someone's house sometimes,
absolutely.
you know?
Yeah, of course.
And that's gone now because it's almost like, you know, a race to sell booze, like you said, because there's only this short window of time and everybody wants to, you know, and obviously the cost of doing business and the cost of wages, everything's gone up.
Again, I contribute a lot of that to just the, you know, the evolution of man, you know, humans and
Sure.
technology. I think ultimately is to blame for that because, you know, with your cell phone now, you're getting hit with 50 things every minute, you know, like, and your attention span becomes shorter. So with music, I could be on a streaming service and just flip through a million tracks before you had your track. You'd listen to an entire album. And so it's changed the way things, you know, people ingest music and people are engaged with their friends and so forth. There's nothing worse than I'm DJing and I'm seeing a couple that are in front of each other and they're on their cell phones and no one's talking and like they're not talking to each other. So,
Totally.
But you know, it is what
it is what it is, as I always say. It is what it is for now. But I think we can change it. Like I think as a community, I think if we, you know, help to sort of enlighten everybody that's listening to those kind of, you know, because it wasn't broken. Like it was never broken. Those were great times.
Well, you go to a concert now, it's the same thing. Everybody's recording. They're not even enjoying it. They're recording it. They got their phones out and they're like trying to show their friends where they are. They're not actually put your phone away and enjoy the concert. You know, it's a 2-hour
I'm
experience.
guilty of this. I've done this. Like I go to a concert, go to the Eagles, you know, I pull up my phone, I record like a song. I might watch that video once. Like seriously, it's in my phone somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, and I might show someone one time maybe or 2 times. Yeah. So that's cool. But like watch the show, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Take it in, you know.
There you go.
And I you know, and that's not, you know, you being a DJ and an artist and me being a former DJ and artist saying that. It's just I have experienced the difference between having your phone out and not having your phone out. And not having your phone out, you're connecting with the performance,
100%.
Right? And the music.
I agree, absolutely.
So as far as, you know, anybody who's listening, and this spans to more than just DJs and dance music artists. In general, you know, I was telling you earlier that I see a difference between, you know, sort of the music business and the entertainment business, right? And, you know, the entertainment business is booming. I mean, you know, there's a lot of artists out there that, you know, are selling, you know, there's an artist, Taylor Swift just put out her thing in Canada and 22 million people just tried to buy tickets in a country that's 40 million people.
Yeah.
I mean, so some artists that are, you know, great at what they do and are also amazing entertainers are selling like crazy.
Yeah.
But yet you have people who, you know, in the music business that are the art people that write music, you know, that are not doing that, right? Mm-hmm. Not making all that money. And so,
well, starving artists have been around in the history of time as well. You know,
totally,
it's tough. It's definitely a hard industry, but you love it. You know, you do it for the craft, right? You do it for your passion. But absolutely, there's a business aspect of the music business. Absolutely.
So your perspective, obviously, you run the label Zip DJ. You're a DJ artist. You know a lot of artists. Like, for people that are watching the show, people that are coming up, you know, how do they get from where they are? I mean, we've spoken before at conferences. We've been asked this question, but like, how do they promote themselves? How do they build a brand? How do they get? Because some of them would argue, hey, you know, I got a great brand. I got 10,000 followers on Instagram. I got this many. Yeah, but how many are going to buy a ticket to your show, man?
Yeah.
How many people can you put in seats in London, Ontario, in Toronto, Ontario, in Port Huron, Michigan, Detroit, Michigan? How many people can you physically get to buy a ticket, not get given a ticket, buy a ticket, come out and see you? And, you know, so that's the thing is, you know, what is your perspective on how guys build brands and create real promotion?
From a DJ perspective or artist perspective?
Both.
I mean, a DJ, you know, I call it a sonic brand, and it's like your sound, right? What is your the sound that people can associate you if they're coming to hear you, what can they expect, right? And so that's a sonic brand, and of course there's the exterior part is the whole thing, the experience of Is he, is he entertaining with the crowd? Is he engaging? I mean, just looking at your crowd makes a difference. Engaging and realize, oh wow, the DJ look, and of
That's
course
true,
everything that goes with, the social media aspect, your website, your logos, your marketing team, your publicity team, all that goes with it. And same with an artist and a producer and someone making music. It's all encompassing. It's getting all facets. I mean, the beauty now is that you can reach millions of people like that. Before, you'd need to get signed to a label as a producer or as an artist, and that was like winning a lottery. And now you can, put up your own music and have it available to millions of people around the world instantly, tomorrow, right? Anybody could sign up to a service and have their music distributed. But you're one in a million, you got to stand out. So you got to do your work. You need the team, as you said.
Yeah.
I mean, I believe you've built what you've built out of perseverance and passion for what you love to do. And that's the same thing with artists. They got to keep going, right? And just keep at it, because eventually if you're doing something right, people start to take notice. You will build your fans and people will start to recognize.
Yeah.
And you can make a living for sure.
I said it earlier. Yeah. That we were, at the dinner, I was saying, that I think that people need to build a team. I see all these artists doing their own Instagram stuff, doing their own TikTok stuff. And like, that's great, but you're not focused on the art. You're focused on now selling your brand, which is great. But at some point you have to focus on the art, because, as from having a label and listening to how many songs, hit songs are not easy to come by, right? Like if you go and you listen to some of the great artists of all time and you talk to them and you figure out how many songs they wrote to get a hit. Yeah. It's a lot. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so that's the thing is, I feel that artists need to focus on the art, and that's not just the music. I mean, that's the look, that's the branding, that's everything, like you said. But I think that the team aspect is huge for that. And, even if people can't afford a team, they can't afford to pay for a team, get people around you, man. Find your friends, your family, whoever supports you and wants to see you do well. Yeah. They'll come out and hold a phone and shoot some TikTok videos. Like, yeah, in the beginning, that's what you got to do. But, trying to do everything yourself, you're going to spin in circles, because there's only so much time. It's one of the things my dad always told me. He's like, Ryan, you only have this window of time, right? That if you don't do it, this window's going to pass. Yeah. And so, it's the same for artists out there. And that window could be, early on. It could be when you're like me and, you turn 42 and you realize, hey, I want to start DJing again. But it's not. It's when you're passionate. It's when you're most passionate about the art and about the drive, like you said, to do it. And that's one of the things I always say, is if you want something bad enough, you can get it, but you have to commit. Like, you have to go all in. Yeah. And everyone alongside you has to go all in, right? Everybody, that energy has to move all in the same direction. Yeah, absolutely. Everybody has to be moving in the same direction. And, you're the front of that train. And so you got to be very focused, in my opinion, on what it is that you want to take, where you're taking everybody, because you're not just taking the people around you and that are helping you build it in your team. They're just the ones conducting the train with you. Yeah. You're taking the whole world. Well, on a journey.
Bring that full circle. I mean, again, back to Zip DJ in a sense that, if you're producing music and you're an artist and you serve as Zip DJ, you're now getting it into the hands potentially of DJs who will spin it
all over the world,
and get it heard. They have radio shows, they have, podcasts, they have mix shows and so forth. And so, I mean, that's like one aspect of promotion, but there you go, is leveraging all areas of where you could expand your reach, right?
Yeah. And social media, I mean, you're right, it's changed the game.
Absolutely.
It's huge. I mean, when I started DJing back in the day, I mean, Facebook didn't exist. Literally didn't exist. And, I met my wife before Facebook existed. Wow. On another platform I don't even think it's around anymore. But, I mean, that's how far back I go. As the way we used to promote our nights was, we would go out and get, people's phone numbers and create a VIP list. And I'd have a VIP guy, And he would call the VIP list and say, hey, you coming to the club tonight? Make sure you're on the list.
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
build the night, like initially, right? And then there became a tipping point where you didn't have to call people anymore. It was like you had too many people on the list, and the club was at almost double capacity and so on.
Yeah.
And that's the dream when you're a performing DJ. But as an artist, to get traction nowadays, like you said, technology and the internet has changed everything. And in some cases for the good, like the social media, that's an incredible tool. But at the same time, now you're a fish in this massive ocean of music and brands and logos, and every DJ has a logo that looks like the next DJ, right? So I know one of the things you were mentioning at dinner was how to stand out. Mm-hmm. Right? How to have a whole package that stands out. Yeah. Right. I mean, like, what's your perspective on that? On how to stand out and how to be your own.
Well,
artist?
I said it as a producer, you have to have an original sound. I mean, I think that I call it the sonic brand. That's my. I think that's first and foremost. Like you're
gonna have an artist that comes out called Sonic Brand.
There you go. I want royalties.
Okay, all right, 10%.
But no, honestly, I think that for me, I always said as an artist producing music, it starts with a good song. Yeah. And nowadays, like, you have to get that song heard. And the beauty of technology is that it's giving you the platform to get it out to millions of people. So it's up to you to leverage all that for sure.
So focus on the song. Like, we need good songs again. And I agree. I mean, that's something that I'm hearing an incredible, one of the things I heard when I was on Zip DJ was the amount of like mashups and remakes and of all these songs from 70s, 80s, 90s. Oh yeah, it's like bonkers, right? And songs that have been remade already like 3, 4, 5 times. Absolutely. No, they sound great. Yeah. Like, they're great mixes, and like if I was playing a house set, I would put them in for sure because they're gonna bang, and there's probably people in the dance floor that weren't even born when those songs came out, so they're gonna think it's brand new, which is great. But I think that there's nothing like a timeless original hit. There's nothing like it. Yeah. Right. That's why they're timeless. Absolutely. And so I think that there's one of the things that artists should do definitely is focus on, creating some great music again, and not again, but working on some great music as a start to their career. Absolutely. So in your perspective, you've been doing this a while. So have I. Obviously, I do lots of concert festivals, but I love your perspective on this. So festivals, tons of festivals. I think we just had Veld last weekend in Toronto. Mm. So, we've been talking a lot about the club scene, and as we know, the club scene is shifting and changing, but what's your perspective on the festival scene? Like, how has festivals changed clubs and concerts today?
I mean, festivals have probably been around since the 70s, Woodstock and so forth. In the dance music realm, it was raves. They were outdoor festivals, really. And now festivals is the brand or the name or the term used for these big concerts, huge gathering, thousands of people, big DJs, big production sets, with your production sets and your rigs and so forth. To me, that's like with the new concerts for the new generation, especially for electronic music. It's really like where all the big DJs who are now superstars and big artists, they get to see them on those festival stages and festival concerts.
And that's what a lot of the guys have aspired to, right? Like I know, even from talking to some of the guys in the scene that I know now, they are always aspiring to be on
on a festival stage, for sure.
Big stages, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you want, you being on a big stage with thousands of people is a massive rush. I mean, there's no question about it. I've been fortunate to have done some raves in my time. I mean, I still, to be honest with you, if I had to say, well, what's better? I've had times where I've done intimate rooms where there's only a few hundred people or even less, and I've had the best time of my life, and you connect with the audience in a smaller scale. On a rave, everybody's kind of doing their own thing. They're all, watching the DJ. They're doing their thing. They're drinking. They're doing whatever. Yeah. But it's evolved nowadays, because there's so many of these big celebrity DJs that are massive artists that are now rock stars, and that's their platform.
Totally. And I think it doesn't really matter the genre of music. Like if you're in rock and country and dance, there's a scale of money that these artists sometimes are demanding that they can't play a small club anymore, right? Like they've priced themselves out of that market.
Absolutely. And that's where the money's at, right?
Well, yeah.
Masses.
And so, to get to that level of pay in terms of what you demand as an artist, once you get to that level, unless you're playing a casino gig, like, Tiesto plays the casino in Windsor once in a while. Unless someone like that is paying the bill, hoping that, 15 people gamble away their life savings, it doesn't make sense unless you're in a bigger room or a bigger festival type of stage.
Yeah.
And so there's that. But do you think it's killed? Like not killed, but do you think it's affected the club and the concert market?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think in electronic music in particularly, it has. Absolutely. I think dance music now is more ingested in the festival community. They go to listen to their DJs in that kind of realm as opposed to nightclubs, right? And the music, different genres, for example, hip hop, which had taken over the nightclub scene, and we talked about bottle service killing the dance floor. I mean, if you ask me, hip hop has had a massive effect on the change. Now it's more, with hip hop, it's about show, it's about bottles and popping and brands and clothes and fashion and all that, and so. It's not going in, lining up, paying your $15 cover, whatever, and dancing the night away. It's not that same vibe.
Yeah. It's a different experience.
Absolutely.
I mean, we talked about this earlier at dinner, right? Like you were saying, like hip hop has actually done an incredible job of aligning themselves with fashion and brands and things like that, right? To just help propel some of these artists into the moon.
Yeah.
Right. So it's good for the genre in some ways, right? But at the same time, it's also changed the young people's perspective on what the experience is going out to a club, right? Or going out to a nightlife experience, whatever it's a club or a bar restaurant that pretends to be a club out after a certain time.
Well, now they want to hear music that they know. That's the sad part is, right? They go to a bar, a restaurant, a club, a festival, doesn't matter. They want to listen to songs that they could sing back and they know that they have on their playlists on their phone. Unlike the era of, from going back to the 70s, Studio 54 and all that, you'd go to hear music that you've never heard in your life, right? And it wasn't accessible. And you'd listen to this music and be blown away. And it's like, what is this stuff? And it was the experience. It was the whole atmosphere. And that has changed. Now, people go out and they want to hear.
I think you can still get that, right? With house music. Like you can still go to an underground night, let's say, or a club that plays house music, and get lost in the house music as long as your phone's in your pocket.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think that can still happen, but I just think it's far and few between right now.
Exactly. I think the mainstream is looking for, they want to hear music that they know already. They're not out to listen to music that they've never heard.
Yeah,
because they zone out. They're like, but. It's not in every case. There's clubs and restaurants. I mean, warehouse parties still exist, but there's certain markets and they become more niche,
So you don't go from being, whether you're a DJ or an artist or whatever in any genre, you don't go from being, recording your tracks and releasing your tracks to playing festivals. There's an in-between. I was saying to someone the other day, I'm like, hey, everybody... And I think I mentioned it earlier in the podcast. Like, I think, everybody's beginning goal should be to try to get a couple hundred people to come out and see you. Mm-hmm. Sell tickets. Ultimately, right now, if you look at what it comes down to, I mean, streaming, as we know, even there's a lot of major artists complaining about royalties from streaming. So one of the things that I preach all the time is that there's no clear path to success for young people in dance music, like versus other things, not just dance music, period, right? Versus other things, like there's all kinds of ways to learn about how to do, trading, and how to do like video game creation. Like they're teaching video game creation in high school now. I was lucky if there was a typing class in high school. So it's changed, and the clear path to success for me is doing things like this to help people understand, hey. Your first goal should be to create the art, and your second goal should be to put butts in seats. because ultimately that's the value of being a good entertainer with good art.
Well, you'll get booked if you could bring people to
Yeah,
your,
and
to
the more
your show.
people you bring, the bigger you can, the bigger the venue, the more you can charge, and so on, right?
Absolutely.
So your perspective on this, then, as a DJ, like coming from the DJ artist background, in today's day and age, how do people now, young guys coming up, girls, people coming up, how do they sell tickets to shows?
I think you need to build your fan base. You know, it comes now down to DJs that end up on these festival stages typically are releasing music, their own music. You know, so they're an artist of today, right? And as I said, DJs are now in their own right superstars, right? They're most of these people that make it to that level are doing their own music. So it comes down to what we said: start with a song, start with a sonic brand, and start with identity, and making sure that you're original and that you have the machine behind you, and that you use social media and marketing and publicity to your best advantage to bring crowds. So that way, you know, I talk about the craft of opening sets and closing sets, and the DJs on how, you know, you build up to a headliner and so forth. You know, that's an art form in itself.
Right. Yeah, no, it's true. And I think that once you get to that point where you can put that art together and you can sell those tickets and you can start building that brand through social media, through word of mouth, through everything, then you start to, then you can start to really get going and really build your team and really start to propel yourself. But I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is you can, I think people are focusing way too much on social media in the very beginning, right? And I think that it's great to, don't get me wrong, it's great to have a following on social media, but the downside of that is it gives you this false sense of followers, real followers, like
right.
people who are going to come out to a show.
Right.
Right. Because, those people, you have 10,000 followers, but who knows how many of those are bots, or even if they are real, they're spread all over the place.
Yeah.
So if you're from, like, here in Canada, if you're from Toronto, yeah, you got a better chance if you're living in a major city of a bunch of them being from that city, for sure.
Yeah.
But how many of them are going to come out? Like, how many times have you played a gig where you're like, yes, buddies are like, yeah, I'm going to come out and see you, man. And they don't show, right? Something comes up, whatever, So, so if you've got 10,000 followers, the question is, how many of those people are going to come out and see you, right?
Yeah.
So I think there needs to be a focus too for young people coming up, to make sure that your fans are real, and make sure that your base of fans as you're coming up is real, and that they come out and they support you. And, I was mentioning earlier at the dinner, like, artists are the best supporters, right? Artists who support other artists is the best. That's,
I mean, in my, from running a label for over 3 decades, I mean, you would start literally going city to city, town to town, building an artist, getting known and building a few fans along the way at each city. And then slowly, by the time you did a national tour, you had 300 fans, for example, in one country, and then build it from there, and do the tour all over again and build another 300 fans. Now you have 600, and you build it from there. And then the next time you go to that town, guess what? You're going to have 150 people coming to your show because they heard, wow, these guys was really good. And so it's a similar thing in a DJ, building that on a social media platform, getting your music exposed, getting heard, getting those clippets that attract people's attention, and getting it and making it go viral and so forth. Yeah, for sure. I've seen artists go from, less than 1,000 followers to millions of followers in a very short time span. And you couldn't do that back in the day without huge marketing machines like major labels behind you and so forth. You could accomplish it now.
What I think is really interesting? You just touched on something that made me think of this. I talked to someone the other day. Or no, I was in a meeting online, and a bunch of people were asking me about marketing, and they were like, hey, what do you do? And part of what I do is I put out videos, right? I'm always putting out these videos. I have a little guy I hold up at Christmas called Rockstar Santa, right? And I do these videos, and they're completely off the cuff videos, right? But what? It's interesting, like, with all this technology that we have, is how many DJs are actually recording them, their experiences, like the experience of going to watch them as a DJ. How many of them are actually recording that, even parts of the night, and putting that content out for people to see what it is to go see X person perform, right? Not many.
Yeah.
From my
A lot of
experience,
DJs will set up shop, in their kitchen or whatever and do a live stream. But you're right. You're absolutely right.
I'm talking about live shows, right? And I mean, listen, I understand 15 years ago that it wasn't as easy, to do what I'm talking about. But nowadays, I mean, people are accepting the quality of cell phone videos all the time.
Yeah.
So, and the phones that we have now, the cameras on them are amazing. So I'm not saying go start shooting videos on phones everywhere, but, I mean, there's photographers and videographers at almost every club out there, almost every festival out there. Mm-hmm. This content exists. And so I would argue that some DJs would say, well, we get that content from so-and-so but it's not the same, right? If you have people who are on your team who know what you're trying to accomplish. Remember going that down the road in the train thing, right? Then they're shooting that content for the purposes of what you want to push and how you want to market yourself, to what markets do you want to market yourself, what kind of vibe. So anyway, I just, I was curious if you saw something I didn't see out there.
No. I mean, look, technology from every aspect, including, we're getting into AI era and automated everything. Really, you could create videos with machines, and it's crazy how times have changed and evolved. And so if you could harness that, it's incredible. I mean, even as an artist, you're a DJ and you don't know how to produce music, there are tools now with algorithms of hey, give me a beat with this kind of style, and boom, it's created for you. And it's you got major tools at your disposal, software, plugins, all that stuff that back in the day you'd have to create from scratch.
Totally.
Yeah.
So AI, that brings up a thing, you've been involved with the Junos here in Canada for years. I recently heard that the Recording Academy, the Grammys and everybody down south, that they're talking about, not allowing AI music. So,
right.
This is obviously, we're talking into the infancy of all this stuff, but what's your views on that? What's your views on it in general?
Look, I think harnessing technology, including AI, is a good tool, right? I still feel that music needs soul. It needs a human, right? And so at the end of the day, there is a difference. You can create something that's mechanical and AI, but is it created by someone's heart and he put his feelings into that music? Time will tell. I don't know at this point. I think it's early days, but I think that harnessing the technology as a producer, as an artist, is a good thing. But creating a song where you're completely hands off and having machines create it, I don't agree with that necessarily. But
yeah, I would tend to agree with you there. I think that both of us have come up through major, in some cases, technology shifts. Even like you were talking earlier about how you were cutting from tape to tape, you know what I mean?
With a razor blade.
Yeah, and now we're copy and pasting files in software. As much as
your phones are disposable too. Think of your photos, how it goes from as you change phones and computers, and it goes from hard drive to hard drive, phone to phone, and eventually stuff is just lost and you don't know where it's backed up, and now it's cloud and this and that. It's you're right. You used to have a physical photo album that you could take out and show the family, look and flip through pages.
My grandmother has a whole closet.
Isn't that the best?
Full of them.
It's the best.
I still wonder what we're going to do with them. When we get them, it's going to be I got to find a place to put these. Yeah. But we're going to keep them because it's because it's physical.
Digitize them.
Well, absolutely. But at the same time, I think that, the AI thing is interesting. I think that, like you said, as a tool, right? Like many other tools that we have, like auto-tune, some people have taken auto-tune and they've made an entire sound out of it. Yeah. Right? Without it, their sound wouldn't even exist. Yeah. But yet it's still them. It's still that person behind it. So I agree with you. Using AI as a tool is great. Yeah. Allowing the software to create your entire work of art and you have no involvement in the art, then it's not your art.
Right.
Right. And I think that, I talked way early in the show about human connection and energy. And that's what you're getting. When you see a good concert, right? And I know you went to go see Earth, Wind and Fire and Lionel Richie, and I've seen them both separately, but not together. So I'm jealous. But you know, here's someone who's in his 70s and still puts on a show like it's the day he recorded the album, right? And that is, you know, the fact. So when you capture back in the day when he captured that performance in the studio, and the fact that this many decades later, he can still put that out to tens of thousands of people in crowds all over the world. That's incredible. Yeah. Like that's beyond a work of art. I mean, he's a superhero in, you know, as far as I'm concerned in music, to be able to do that so many years later.
Absolutely.
But I think it's one of those things where, that's why it's important for humans to put their energy into the art, because it's a representation of you. Yeah. Right. So I think that to summarize,
but talent does rise to the top, like it does.
Oh, it does.
I mean, it usually has a way of making, you know,
totally.
If you look at artists that break through, usually, you know, there's something special about them, right? It's not made up necessarily, right? So
totally,
there's got to be some substance there that.
And I think the thing that I mean, this is early days, right? But the thing I would caution people about with AI and allowing AI to create your entire work of art is it's not you, right? Like it's, and what's to stop someone else from saying, well, I want to do a track that's better than so-and-so. Like it's not like part of the experience and part of the value, if you will, of being an artist is that, you know, this promoter or this label or whoever it is, this brand is going to hire you to go out and perform your art, right? But if it's not your art, I mean, I don't know if you've experienced this, but I've been to concerts where especially in country music, because there's a lot of artists that don't write their own songs, right? Because obviously in Nashville, there's a ton of songwriters and, you know, the best songs get picked for some of these albums. And I've experienced this even at the Ryman Auditorium when I was down in Nashville, where I would sit there and listen to a bunch of people sing. And I can tell, I know it sounds bizarre, but I can tell based on the emotional connection in the performance, right?
Of who wrote the song.
Of who wrote the song that they're singing and who didn't, right? And so I think that there's definitely something there too, right? Where if you let AI write your song completely, you know, it's never really your song. And you know that. Yeah. And somewhere deep down, I think the audience will know that too, energetically, right? Yeah. So there's definitely, I would agree with you anyway, that it's a, you know, I think it's a great tool and I think people should utilize it as it continues to evolve, but, you know, stick to being the artist, stick to creating, you know, your work of art, your way with whatever tools are out there. Yeah. And that being said,
I love technology.
Yeah.
I'm a fan, you know, I get intrigued for sure. I mean, you know, how, you know, from a DJ perspective, how things have evolved from, I was playing vinyl. That's how I started. And then eventually went to, actually I was doing cassettes before vinyl, you know, and then vinyl and then CDs. And then I went digital and now I'm on Serato using, you know, and then I was using two, you know, CDJs, and now I'm on a controller that does all the work, and it has stems and it has all kinds of crazy technology on the fly. It's amazing. I love it. I love technology.
Yeah, no, I do too. And I mean, we're both in different areas, obviously, our businesses in the music world, but we're both involved in technology heavily. I mean, your entire platform is a superior piece of technology, right? Yeah. And, you know, Music City, I mean, you know, without technology, we wouldn't be able to do what we do now. I mean, look at the amount of people we're covering with these line array column sound systems.
I was blown away by the technology. I got the tour of the PA Shop Production Center, and it was like mind blowing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and that's something that's taken, you know, decades to build.
Forget projectors, LED screens.
Yeah,
and that's digital lighting controls,
and it's constantly evolving.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You know, like constantly, like, you know, 15 years ago we had 15 mil LED walls. Now we have, you know, and then 8 mil, and then 6 mil, and now 2 mil. You know, where does it go? You know, but it's the technology is constantly changing, and so. You know, you mentioned vinyl and cassettes. Oh my gosh! I mean, I was not DJing on cassettes, although I do know people that were.
Well, the only reason why I was DJing cassettes is I couldn't afford to buy the records at the time, so I'd tape them off the radio.
Okay.
You know, I'd be recording on the radio at you know, there'd be a mix show or something, and then I'd play those, and then eventually started to
Wow.
do gigs and buy vinyl and so forth. Vinyl was very expensive, still is.
It still is.
Extremely.
Yeah, extremely. Even more so now.
And now people complain for their $10 a month, subscription.
I know. It drives me insane.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to, spend most of my DJ wages buying vinyl. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Oh, I know.
The record store was the curator, like.
I could tell you DJs, balk at spending, $30, $50 a month on a subscription for unlimited promotional music. And back in the day, I was spending, 20 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, I was spending $150 a month to get a handful of records.
I know.
And I was skipping as I was leaving, all happy,
There was times, I don't know if this had to happen to you. There's times where there was no 12-inch single of the track, so you had to buy like the entire album or double album for like $30 plus.
$30, yeah. You cry.
And there's only one track that ever came off the album, but you got to buy the whole thing. Yeah, man. I mean, those are the good days. And I mean, I think for me,
tell me sonically that vinyl, right?
Superior,
right?
Hands
absolutely.
down.
Yeah.
You come to my house right now, you know what's in the basement? 2 Tech 12s,
right?
And an Allen and Heath mixer sitting in my basement, right in front of my vinyl collection. Yeah, 100%.
It has had a resurgence for sure. Vinyl has had a massive comeback actually.
Yeah, huge.
In
fact, I think there was a stat we can pull it up, but there's a stat that. Vinyl actually has had record sales in like the last couple of years. There's like record sales of vinyl ever.
Absolutely. Yeah. For listening experience, in your living room and hi-fi stereo system in a theater, or I completely agree. Where I kind of disagree is the lossless technology versus compressed MP3s and so forth. And I've personally done my own tests over many years, in nightclubs to see, whether a wave, recorded at 24-bit makes a difference of a good high quality MP3. And I could tell you firsthand that the average person, they don't really hear the sonic difference. And usually the systems are not their background systems or their nightclub systems. They're monophonic,
Yeah, they're not
bass.
set up. They're not set up like back in the day.
They're not set up, so you can't really hear the difference. So I'll challenge people that say, "Oh, you need lossless." It's not necessarily the case. I mean, compressed, good compression on digital files, other than the benefit of the smaller file, you can't really hear the difference in the environment, right? So. But I still record at 24-bit in the studio, but people now ingest their music, their music through streaming services that is streaming through 128-bit, and then pairing that on Bluetooth, which is even worse. Yeah. And so that's what you're hearing today.
Compressed. Yeah, I mean, I run a store that sells speakers, right? And rent speakers. So I get asked, especially when I'm in the showroom, I get asked a lot, when I'm in there, hey, what do you think sounds the best? What are the best speakers? What's the best microphone? Right. And one of the first things I tell people is I say, listen, sound is relative, right? And sound is relative to what you're used to.
Absolutely.
Right. Some people are used to sound in they work in an office building somewhere, and they've got a 10-cent ceiling speaker above them. Those metal brown ones.
No.
Which are horribly sound horrible. And they're not full range. They're 70 volt. Right. They have a little transformer on the back of them, and there's a line that's going 1,000 feet into a basement somewhere. Yeah. So it doesn't even have any bottom end. Yeah. So that's their normal daily relation to sound.
And your cell phone.
And the cell phone. And the systems in some of the older cars, right, aren't great. So, sometimes people don't have the same sort of, perspective as I do on sound. I mean,
recordings have gotten louder and louder and more compressed so that it comes through on your cell phone and heard louder and so forth.
So sound is relative.
Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
Everybody's going to perceive sound differently. So what I think sounds good and what you think sounds good and what SA thinks sounds good is completely different. And so I think that, at the end of the day, that's a big part of it too, right? Is what sound is relative. But I still, hands down, agree with you that vinyl, sonically has the biggest.
It's an analog warmth that that's
the wave
captured.
I mean, in sound reproduction, right? The biggest wave is bass. It's bottom end, right? So if you go back and you watch some of the documentaries about the Paradise Garage and about Studio 54 and where it all came from, you'll see that, those sound systems that were handcrafted and designed and built and tuned
had big ass subwoofers,
big ass
bass
horn loaded subwoofers. And they were placed in specific spots, aimed specific ways.
Of course.
All the components were separate.
And now speakers have gotten tiny, the small. Yeah.
Absolutely. And in some cases, you got these Bluetooth speakers that just have one component doing the full spectrum of sound.
Yeah.
So let me get this straight. When the bass hits and the vocals hit at different times, how does that work with a speaker when it's supposed to be doing this?
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't. It creates distortion. And most people don't think about that because they're not in my world of having to recreate sound, right? Reproduce sound. But that's why, if you look at our systems, like those big line arrays you saw today, right? Each one of those line array tops has, 2 to 3, depending on which model, 2 to 3 to 4 inch horns in them.
Wow.
Right? Like it's and they're usually 3-way boxes plus the subs. So it's a 4-way system.
Wow.
Right? Sometimes a 3-way system, depends on the models. But that allows you to separate the bass to the subs. We cross most of those subs over at like 80 hertz.
Wow.
Right? So those 15-inch drivers in those tops are pumping out 80 hertz plus.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why it sounds phenomenal. It's hitting you in the
awfully
face.
low.
We just saw Boots and Hearts here in Canada on the weekend, massive country festival. They had like 100 boxes on that show between subs and tops.
Unbelievable.
And so those 15s are putting out 80 hertz and up or 100 hertz and up. I mean, it's hitting you right here, hundreds of feet back. Of course it is. There's tens of thousands of watts behind that.
Yeah,
so like you said, some of these systems, especially the restaurant ones, like restaurant people come to me all the time. Hey, can I get a new sound system? And I'm like, yeah, but what are you going to use it for? And they're like, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, you ever going to have more than background music? Well, you ever going to do live to airs? This was back in the day, live to airs. Live to airs? Well, yeah, probably. Yeah, you have the radio station. I said, well, then you're going to have a microphone because the person from the station is going to want to talk. And that's dynamic sound. You start yelling into a microphone.
Yeah, it's going to distort.
It's going to distort like crazy.
Speakers,
yeah, because it's a background system. It's not designed. It's designed for programmed sound,
Absolutely.
Constant level.
Yeah.
Right. So the minute I hear that, I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Right. And then I'm like, you ever have a DJ? Well, it's like, okay, well, you need a foreground system.
Yeah.
And you need something that can handle something real. And so I try to do that. Not everybody can afford it in early days.
But everybody
right?
wants this aesthetic now for a bar and a restaurant.
Tell me about it.
You want it tiny and hidden so you don't want to see it.
Can you put the subs inside of this table?
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Inside the bench? Yeah.
Yeah, inside the bench. It's like, it's unbelievable. And so, I mean, it's changed, right? Going back to what we were saying, it's changed. And now it's not about the perfect placement of the subs for the experience and the sound. It's about the aesthetics, like you said. It's about where the tables sit.
Full circle.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So we have to, I think to get back to the really good music experience, if we can sum it up with something, right? To say, if we can get back to a great music experience, what the sound system is matters. The placement of it matters. The lighting matters. The quality of the music that the DJ's playing matters. And I think when you put it all together, you would notice a difference.
Yeah.
Like if a club did everything we're talking about, like back in the days of Paradise Garage and all that, if that were to happen today in Toronto,
the full experience for sure.
it would be game changing, because.
Well, there are there are venues that do
Some.
pay a lot of attention to that.
There are, but their DJs are still playing 128 songs on those rigs.
I mean, right. At the same time, I mean, playing it on a massive system
is better.
Is a lot different than little crappy background speakers.
Hands down.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because you're able to more easily reproduce.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you have a massive system with tons of headroom. So you can keep your gains down and you're not distorting.
Yeah.
Whereas on those smaller systems like you're talking about, what headroom? You're at 10 right when you start.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, 100%. And so that being said, like technology in the clubs has changed too, right? Like back in the day when I was playing, which again, I stopped playing in 2002, 2003. I was still playing on turntables. This is not a well-known fact, but I've never played a DJ set on CDJs.
Right.
Ever.
Right.
Which sounds insane. It makes me feel old.
Well, now are, Toronto's just opened an all vinyl bar. So you should
really
get back in the game.
Hey, it's time.
Absolutely.
I waited long enough.
Absolutely.
But how, like, what are you seeing in the clubs? Are you seeing CDJs?
No, I'm not. I mean, it's gotten to the point where the controllers have now kind of become the mainstream in, the bigger nightclubs will have your CDJ and your mixer set up. But people space is expensive. And so they're putting you in a very small booth and they're trying to shove you in a corner. So they're using controllers nowadays that pretty much do everything that the bigger players do. Sure. And they're getting smaller and smaller and smaller, more compact. And they're compatible with all DJ software and so forth. So yeah, that seems to be the way it's going.
And you said earlier you're using what, Serato?
I'm a Serato guy. Yeah, I'm still.
How long have you been on Serato?
Probably since the invention of Serato.
I got a copy of Serato and SL3, so and with vinyl.
Yeah.
And so I've played Serato back in the day a little bit.
I love Serato because it's as close to, my experience is as close to the vinyl experience, like one record and another record, and I could play four and I have stems and all this other stuff, but it's the most basic, true and stable system from a digital perspective. I mean, that's worked for me. So
yeah,
but it's all a preference thing, right? DJs show up with USB sticks. I mean, I still like my hard drive and I like more selection because I don't know what I'm going to get into. I might drop a 70s record, and on a USB, it's like, where's my stuff? There's not enough there, even though there's bigger USBs.
Totally.
But it's the experience and the recall and that type of thing. And when you're doing bigger shows on let's say, a festival stage and stuff, you're typically using USBs
and CDJs still.
on the bigger stages. Yeah. Because they're going through a number of DJs. So you can't set up your laptop and stand and so forth.
I've seen guys try to do that. It's a nightmare.
Look, I mean, I'm a laptop guy. I love my library there, and I like to type and go, on the fly. I'm old school that way, where I don't have pre-recorded sets or pre-recorded playlists or set crates. I'm doing things as I feel in the moment.
Totally.
Yeah.
So what are you using? What's your controller of choice right now?
I'm mostly Pioneer. I would say, like, it's all Pioneer 1000. I've used different ones. I mean, DDJs, all that stuff, all kinds of different.
You heard the recent news, Serato news, Pioneer.
Absolutely, yeah.
Pioneer
that's an interesting
Serato
move for sure. Absolutely. I mean, that's going to change the game because now they own the biggest software. Pioneer being, the biggest manufacturer of DJ hardware, now owning the biggest DJ software. That is definitely a game changer.
Yeah,
for sure.
I saw it. I was I think it came out on a Monday morning, and I was doing a concert that week with Ja Rule and DJ Don DeMarco, his DJ, and me were talking about it, and I said, hey man, so this is what's happening, and because I don't know what's going to happen down the road with licensing for Serato. It's Pioneer. So, they've got, in my opinion, and through the pandemic, they've done an incredible job of
they can
selling
definitely own the
controllers.
market. Absolutely.
There's no question. So I think, it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. But, right now, what I'm seeing from a retailer standpoint is they're now offering, the new controller, right? They're offering both. Like, it works with both now.
Yeah.
Right? Which, from our perspective, was a nightmare.
You mean Record Box and Serato?
Yeah, Record Box and Serato was Pioneer's Record Box software, and because for us,
I think they realized, because they were pushing Record Box, which is their software.
Yep.
And they finally realized, what, Serato's just too powerful. They came out first, and they were doing it right. Most hip hop DJs are in Serato, like around the world, is like Serato's the norm.
Yep.
And they finally realized that, hey, if you can't beat them, let's
Buy 'em.
Buy them. Exactly.
But that's from our perspective on the retail side, and I know from Pioneer's perspective, it's the same. Is they had controllers that were only record box, and the exact same controller that was for Serato.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it was double everything.
And they realized that the Serato version sold more.
Of course. No, it did. It did. As a retailer, I can say it did for sure, hands down. In fact, the DDJ 1000 SRT, which is the Serato version of that unit, is still selling out.
The biggest selling. Absolutely.
Still,
yeah,
I had one left,
favorites.
and it sold just a couple days ago.
Yeah.
They come in, they're here for a day or two, and they're gone.
Yeah.
But yet I've got these other units from them, FLX one, a few other units, and they stick around longer.
For sure.
Right. But those Serato units fly. So yeah, I think it was a good move for Pioneer. It'll be a game changer for the whole industry. I'm excited to actually see what they do with it.
Yeah.
Right. Where they take it. And how it's going to shift how Serato DJs use
Monopoly, baby. That's it.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, I mean, we've talked about, sound relativity and all that stuff and AI and technology. But, I want to talk about the future, because I think the future is important on how, as a community in music, how we shape the future. There's not enough people talking about, where we're going as a community, right? Everybody's kind of in their own silos and doing their own thing. And when we were in Amsterdam together, one of the things that I noticed that I thought was really great was that, and I had a few conversations with some DJs over there, and because I was so confused. I'm like, this is weird to me coming from Canada, where these guys would like share, like what we would call trade secrets, right? Like, this is the bass line I used, and this is how I tweaked it. And, it's a different culture over in Europe, right? Where they share all that stuff, and they all want to see each other do really, really well.
I agree.
And we don't do that as much here. And we should. We really should work together as a community, because let's face it, I mean, music is up against all kinds of other forms of entertainment now, right? I mean, anything you can get on a phone, basically. And that's a lot. Right?
Well, hip hop artists do it best. They are all featured on each other's records, and they're all pushing each other's albums, and they're doing it right. And similarly in Europe, I find the same type of collaborations and stuff within the electronic scene. I mean, Canada has been one where everybody kind of does their own thing, and everybody's out to outdo the other one, but they don't like to collaborate and stuff. And I've always been, I as High Bias, we put together Canada's Finest House, and I remember that was a series that I was trying to bring Canadians together and have producers all be joint for one, and collaborate and so forth. And I've been a Juno chairman for a couple decades, so I'm all for one for pushing our scene. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I'd love to see more collaborations and more pushing of our own.
100%. And I don't think it should be up to the government to mandate CanCon and all that to make it happen. Like, we need to make it happen ourselves.
Agreed.
And so, bringing people together as a community is one of the main passions for me with this show, is trying to get people like yourself on here to talk about the past, talk about what's current, but also to, talk about where we're going. And, like, where do you see, like, even in your own world, like, where do you see Zip DJ going? Like, where do you see the music side of things going in terms of releases, and like, where do you see things going?
I'm like I said, I'm always I'm excited about technology. I'm excited about music, and sounds are incredible. I mean, I'm always blown away by the amount of music that comes out, but the amount of quality music that comes out as well. So that's why, our curation and the technology and leveraging the technology to help, for the DJs and so forth. I see it evolving, where we're getting into other aspects and other avenues to help DJs, redefining their music discovery experience and how they can better their sets and better their playlists and better how they, acquire music. And ultimately, with my label hat, the promotional aspect is like, how are DJs promoting this music, right? To reach the masses, to get it out there and get it heard and build the artist, as you said, you know, to build your fans and get people to come to your shows.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, I do something that I do, you know, part of the reason why I keep referring to it as a community and not a business is because, you know, we do this, you know, this whole thing, this thing called music, we do it because we love it. You know, at least I do.
It's our passion for sure.
You know, and I think that that's what we all share as a community, right? As a music community, we share the passion of it all.
Yeah.
And I think we have to stop hiding behind, you know, behind these facades of, you know, I'm better than you because of this, that, and the other thing. And you know, I think we need to take those walls down and start really connecting again, and, you know, working with each other and learning from each other. And because we're not all the same and we don't have the same journey.
Yeah.
And there's lots to be learned together as a community. You know, I don't even call my customers, right? Like, you go on my website, you sign up, you're a family member.
Yeah.
Music City family member, right?
Yeah.
Because to me, you know, if you're crazy enough to be in this industry, in this community,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the
then your
Music
family
City brand is brilliant. I mean, kudos to you for this platform and just doing what you're doing and bringing it, you know, to light for sure. I mean, that's the brand right there. Right?
There it is.
So cheers,
Music
brother.
City. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks, man.
No problem. Thanks for having me, man.
You're welcome, man.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to the Music City Live podcast. This is Ryan and Nick signing off for episode 1. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you again soon.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you for watching Music City Live. If you liked this episode, like the video. And for more clips and episodes, subscribe to the channel. Feel free to join the conversation by commenting below and visit us at musiccityliveshow.com.